So we are starting with session 5. Sometimes I have the feeling that one session is enough for an evening. Do you feel that too? Not Tom. Maybe Tom and I just stay here till the sweet end. But for some people it's enough, one session is like... But we have to go on. And if we do it right, then there's a little bit of connection between these various topics. But basically we have 3 things. It is transitions, death, and life. You cannot put that like that in the title because then people would think you're crazy. But it is transitions, death, and life. So we call it life, death, transitions. But it's transitions, death, and life. So, and I mixed them a little bit. So this session is about death and the next one is about life. So in the previous session we tried to go to the depth of experience because the suggestion is not that when you die it will be like that Kumne evening on October or whatever it is today, 20. It's not like that. But the state of mind we're going through is when the mind has no more associations. It's not engaged anymore in people, in things, in ideas. That stops. So if we go to the depth of experience now, that too is disassociating from any mental engagement. It's not necessarily the same experience, but that's a state of mind that you want to become familiar with, that you don't want to fall asleep in. Because usually we stay awake by thinking about things, and when we don't think anymore, we fall asleep. So, but there's a whole part of mind that is not the thinking mind. And we want to become familiar with that, not only for death, but for life too. So, but in death it's crucial because that is what's going to happen. And I think the question that was on the Jim, the question was on the...
the body separates from, the mind separates from the body at death. Is that what happens for people with Alzheimer's?
So mind separating from the body happens for all sentient beings, animals, human beings alike. Alzheimer is a brain disease. Residues of plaques is the same, block the flow of energy. So people cannot remember anymore, cannot articulate anymore, and cannot articulate what they think anymore. So those are 2 very different issues. An Alzheimer's person is not where the mind is separate from the body. No, the brain is sick and it cannot perform certain functions. But there's much more to mind than the brain. Like all sensitivity is mind too. Feeling is part of mind too. So Alzheimer person, it seems to be, continues to feel, and in a way continues to hear, not necessarily maybe the way that we hear, that we can right away relate to what we hear, but they do hear. So you want to be very careful with Alzheimer patients to not treat them as different people, like kids, or because yes, they may have diapers and they may be what's the word, incontinent. Is that English too? How you pronounce it?
I don't know.
So they may act like that, but except for the thinking, the brain thinking part, everything is intact. They feel. And the worst part about Alzheimer, of course, is that they go in and out. And they know that. They know they will be out again and that they will lose it. So no, that's a different topic. So the topic for this session is actually very simple and a little bit, very simple is, can we become familiar with the certainty of death? So some teachers say, can you start convincing yourself that you will die one day? And some people think it's morbid, macabre. I don't know what luguber is in English, but so that it is weird, preoccupation with death. No, it's not a preoccupation with that, it's a preoccupation with what is true. And I don't think it is different than everything else we have in mind. Every athlete, competitive athlete who goes into the yard or the courtyard or the baseball court or the football field, they think they're going to win. Maybe not after 10 minutes, but they think they're going to win. That's their mindset. So you know the mindset. You know, you can, if you have small children especially, you have constantly, you have your eye on them. You don't need to learn that. It just comes naturally. So how do you do that? Nobody teaches you how to be a parent, and suddenly you have this little kid that's growing up, and it is naturally for you to watch it. Hopefully not anymore at a certain age, but the first time it is essential that you watch it. It's a natural thing to do. Likewise, bearing in mind, it's much more than bearing in mind, is to have this firm connection with the certainty of death. So that is, we're going to spend a whole hour on that, the certainty of death, to somehow convince yourself from it. When I say, well, I feel young, but I'm not, or when I feel, oh, death is far away, death is absolutely not far away at all. So there are people who, but I say this only one more time, I said that the other time, there are people who make this into a kind of salacious, kind of neediness, I may not live very long, so pay attention to me or something like that. There are people who are like that, but you and I are not like that, right? We don't ask that kind of attention. But to completely ignore it is really, I'm talking to myself now, number one, is really naive and stupid. So to forget about it and pretend that it's not going to happen. And for many people, it's happening all of a sudden. Maybe if you're lucky, between quotation marks, you still get 6 months. But some people die in 2 days or 3 days or in 1 day or in 10 minutes. They fall from the stairs and they're dead. So things can happen very, very quickly. So somehow keep the certainty at the back of my mind. It's not different than keep your well-being of your kid in mind, or wanting to win in a game, or you're with a client and you have this, let's say you're a therapist and you talk to a client, your mind drifts off, especially if the client tells the same old story again and again. You drift off and you start to look at the clock and all those things. But you come back to the client because that's the client's time. That's natural for you to do. So it's the same with that. We don't do it with death because we've never heard it. So one of our rules of a successful life is, number one, is mind and the body is the best thing you can give yourself. And maybe the next best thing you can give yourself is the certainty of death. Now, almost everybody that you will tell that to, they will think, no, that sounds heavy and negative. It's not. It's not. It makes you alive. The person who is aware of the certainty of death is more alive than the person who's not. It doesn't seem that way because the person who's not, speak too fast, Argentina and Brazil. The person who's not aware of the certainty of death can be very excited and can be engaged in being excited about something, but that's not necessarily alive. Alive is not necessarily when you are all excited and completely into something. That's not necessarily alive. Like if you ask, I don't know, maybe a teenager, if you would have asked me when I was 20, what is a sign of aliveness, I would have answered being emotional. If I'm very emotional, now I'm alive. If I'm angry, now I'm really alive. This is a sign of aliveness. well, when you're a little older, you know that that's really not a sign of aliveness. It's alive, it's a sign of being caught, trapped. You're trapped in something, so not at all. So younger people maybe, or people think that being excited about something is alive. It's not necessarily alive. Alive, when you are alive, that means everything is alive. It is as if everything has a spirit to it. That's a language that may not suit you, but as if everything is alive. I have very nice experience these days. I'm living at Ratnaling, and it sounds very idyllic. When I walk to the office, which is about 4 minutes, I walk through the redwoods, and I have to push the turkeys to the side to make way for me. And an occasional deer is looking at me and looks at me and said, "What are you going to do?" And well, I'm asking, "What are you going to do?" I'm going to the office. So it's a very natural setting. And I start to look at the trees already. Actually started when Jim and I were making the Mandala Gardens book. Start to look at trees and notice that every tree is different. Now this may be old koek for you, maybe oude koek for jou, but for me it wasn't. It was, 20 years ago when we made that book. So you start to see trees and that every tree is different, and how to describe that is maybe, well, there's a spirit to that tree. But again, that may be not your language. But when you visit Tibet, you know, every mountain has a spirit, and they honor that spirit, and they ask that spirit to protect them. And you can I don't know what you think, but people think maybe that's childish or not, but it's not, because it's a sign that everything is alive. So now, for the first time, I'm embarrassed to say, but it's true. I walk through Amsterdam, but that's new, maybe that's the reason. Until now, I would always bicycle. And bicycling in Amsterdam is a trip. There's a point, it's across the, I don't know that bridge. But if you go from here across the Magerenbrug and you turn right towards the Amstel Hotel, and then right after the Amstel Hotel, there's an area where 5 or 6 roads come together. It's next to a bridge. So you can go straight to the ijsbreker and you can go right across the bridge. And I don't know where left goes. It goes east, Amsterdam Oost. And that point, I love to stand there because there's about hundreds of bicycles in the rush hour that bicycle there, and nobody stops. They're all going. And there are no lights, there are no traffic lights. They're all going. Hopefully no tourists on bike. But all the people from Amsterdam, they keep full. I'm never passing anybody anymore in Amsterdam. Everybody's passing me. And it's not e-bikes. Everybody bikes so fast. And on that crossing where 5 roads come together, they all keep going full speed, and they go like this. It's a little bit like that square in Rome where all these cars drive, and you can just walk across because they go around you. All these little Fiatjes. So since I'm walking, maybe, or since I'm doing this, but now when I'm walking, I begin to see the houses in Amsterdam. Just like the trees, it's a trip. Every house is so different, so special, so quaint, if you want. I don't know what to call it, but every house is popping out. Maybe tourists see that already automatically. But when I'm on a bike, you know, I'm navigating the traffic, so I'm not looking at the houses, or I would be een schroot hoop, or a hoopschroot. So if you're walking, you're lucky. You can see all these houses. And some of them are 200, 300, 400-year-old houses that people have lived in for, I don't know, that is like 15 generations, 12 generations. So it's very, very, very nice. So with the certainty of death in mind, everything starts to come to life. I'm not saying that in my case that happens because I have the certainty of death in mind, but it is like that everything starts to come alive. Even the bench that you're sitting on at the gracht or at the Amstel. So to keep the certainty in mind, the text just says start to convince yourself of the certainty of death. So I don't know how you do it. This is really something that you want to discuss in your smaller groups on 10 o'clock in the morning. How do you think you can do that? Because it's not a you should. You have to somehow not make it into a you should do that. So in these more traditional point of view, that's the most important thing to bear in mind, the certainty of death. So how can you make that an enjoyable experience? Maybe a sign in the kitchen? No. My favorite sign is down the street here. They say, morgen is het bier vrij. That's different. They say, morgen is het bier gratis. Tomorrow beer is free. So you come tomorrow, and it says tomorrow. I think it's on the corner of the Vijzelstraat and Prinsengracht or something. So would that kind of sign, would that work? Tomorrow I may be dead, would that work? Tomorrow I die? So I don't know how to do this. This is the kind of sharing that I think is very nice, how to do that. I'm finished if I would share this with somebody, I'm finished in 30 seconds. How do you do it? Well, I don't know. How do you do it? I don't know either. So, but how do you know to keep your kid in the back of, in the excuse me, how do you do it to keep the well-being of your kid foremost in your mind? You didn't learn that. It happens, hopefully. And how does a kid that starts to play soccer, how it starts to enter the field with wanting to win? Is that just a coach? I don't think so. There are now sports teams that try to take the competitive element out of it. That's a contradiction in terms. You play for fun. Yeah, well, so the goals don't matter anymore? I don't know how to do it. So how to do that, yeah. That would be good. Because everything else seems more important or more fun or more relevant.
I think if I appreciate things, I am also aware that they are
not lasting.
Yeah.
If I appreciate it. Yeah, my only concern is that it doesn't become a rule. It is a rule, but how can we make it a fun rule? Okay. Or a discipline rule? It's part of our discipline. You know, it's like somebody who has a workshop, meaning where tools are, right? Not a workshop seminar, but a place where you hammer and nail. They most of them have a rule: you clean up when you finish. It's just. Some people leave everything like it is, but many people, they clean before they go. It makes so much sense. It's not like, well, I should clean up. No, I want to clean up because tomorrow when I come, I want to start with everything being organized. So how to make this click?
You said about being aware of the finalizations of cycles. This is a way.
To mark the end of a time. But can you say wholeheartedly, I'm going to die one day?
Yeah.
You can? Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
With feeling and passion and it's me who's going to die one day, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, great,
But
then.
I think I was always more afraid to live than to die.
Ah, well, that's the next session. Somebody says I was more afraid to live than to die. Okay, and part of this teaching, and this may rub you the wrong way. Rub you the wrong way means tegen de graad ingaan, means you don't like to hear this, is that dying is not unfair. It's not unfair that you die. Now, this is very hard for children. But where does that stop? Like 25? No, that's unfair. If a 25-year-old dies, it's unfair. 35? Yeah, that's too early. It's unfair. 45? Yeah, that's really unfair. 65? That's too young nowadays. So when is it fair? 80? 92? These teachings say it's not unfair to die, period. I've heard one person say, and that was really very impressive. The person had a certain kind of cancer, and she heard that 3 out of 5 who have that cancer die, and she says, well, I'm apparently one of those 3. So that kind of living by the truth. So these teachings say it's not unfair that you die. It's not a retribution. It's not like you did something wrong and therefore you die, which is what many people like to believe. You did something wrong. So consider the fact, not for other people. Don't apply this on other people, but for yourself. If it turns out tomorrow I'm going to die soon, remind me. You can do that. You can say, it's not unfair. It's much worse if you think there is some kind of punishment in it, which many people, the first thing many people say, what did I do wrong? Nothing. It's not dying is not unfair. But with all these teachings, don't apply them to others, only for yourself. If somebody else is dying, don't say, well, yeah, there's nothing unfair about it. No, your death. It's very unfair if a child dies, very unfair. It's very unfair if someone who's 20 years dies, or 35, or 45, or you're 60 and you just found a partner and a year later he or she dies. That's very unfair. Well, in these teachings it's not. Dying is not unfair. It's part of what happens to all sentient beings. So for ourselves to think of it, it's not unfair. So how can you practice? And I'm coming up with the suggestions that are in the text that talk about this. So maybe these are new kind of thinking. The one is, how can you make the certainty of death more real? And something that I'm sure you have done in a workshop one time or other. But they say every time you see somebody or something, consider it is the last time that you see, hear, feel, communicate with that person or that thing. Almost all people who are hearing the news that somebody they know died, their reaction is, oh, I wish I had told them that I loved them, or I wish we had solved the problem, or I wish. Many people on the news of hearing somebody die feel regret that they didn't do something. And the difficulty with these things is that these kind of regrets, in Dutch you would say, die slijten snel, which means, you have this regret for a moment, but after a month or two, it's already washed over with other things of life. You don't think about it anymore. But it's a very common thing that you have regret that you didn't say something or did say something or do something before the person passed away. That's even with people who you visit every day. So your mother is maybe dying and you come you get a call, she's dead. The first thing many people feel is regret. And the way they cover it all up is something like saying, well, now she doesn't have pain anymore. Well, let's wait with that one until you hear what the Tibetans say about that. It's not necessarily the case that they are in peace and they are with their sister or brother. It's not necessarily the case. So the way to avoid this regret, one is to do as if you see it. You don't say that to the person. You don't say to him, well, I do as if I'm seeing you for the last time. No, don't say that. but as if you're seeing them for the last time. And the next one, to prepare for to bear in mind the certainty of death, is to, of course, make a testament. If you have money that should be divided otherwise than what the law says, the minimum of what the law says. So that's one, but is to somehow come to terms with conflicts that are lingering. Lingering in English means conflicts that are still there. Many people have conflicts with their sibling, their brother or sister for 30, 40, 50, 70 years. 70 years there's a conflict. Now is something very important. People are inclined to, maybe you know everything already I say, but it's good that we remind each other, is that if you have a conflict with somebody, that you should talk it out with that person. That's not necessarily the case. I get once in a while emails from people who say, 15 years ago, I did something that I now regret and I want to clear it up with you. I am not in that picture. You don't need to send me that email. If I'm in conflict with somebody else, I'm in conflict. I need to deal with the conflict that I feel, irrespective of the other person reacting. For them, it's not at all, maybe they never thought about it. It was never a conflict for them. That's one group. This is very common with parents. Your parents are 85 and you are, 60, and you're going to talk about things that happened 40 years ago. They never thought about it anymore. It's not a problem for them. So you want to talk about that is not a problem for them, right? No, you don't want to. It's a problem for you. So you have to work this out, not necessarily with the other person. Now, there is a way that you do work it out with the other person, and how you decide that, I make a mistake. There's a person now that I know is dying, and there have been conflicts with that person. Should I go with her or him? Should I go to her or him and say, well, I felt conflict. I know you felt conflict too. Shall we talk about it? Maybe, but these teachings say first with yourself. And then one method is to forgive yourself that you have this conflict, that you're holding on to this conflict. So the bottom line of dealing with all these issues is starting with self-love. Can you come to terms with it yourself? Can I forgive how I was in that situation? Not how she was, but how I was. So when I begin to forgive how I was, things begin to change. How can you forgive yourself? There are many, many books written about it. Many seminars have ideas. One way that I have applied that, let me say it differently, one way that worked for me is when I would walk in his or her shoes. So I walk in her shoes, having her parents, her friends, her whatever, and having me as an acquaintance. So I'm looking through her eyes, through her whole life, and at me from her point of view. So then it gets all softer. And why is it getting softer? Not because of a psychological reason, but you are releasing the subject-object relationship. Is that clear? The polarity, the distance between the two of you. The distance is the problem, and holding on to the distance is the problem. So if I reverse the distance and I'm on the other side, there's no more distance. If you are like this, I certainly would understand it. I've been like that I think I didn't do anything wrong, so they have to change. They have to take the initiative. They have to come to me. They. And it may be true that I didn't do anything wrong, but what I did wrong is how I dealt with the fact that I kept saying I didn't do anything wrong. There's still the holding, and the holding stays in place as long as the other person is there and I'm here. So this is the problem, that one is there and you are here. So if you reverse that position, you are there looking at yourself, and then it's always the same. Both people are knowingly or unknowingly in pain. But that pain is a reflection of the distance, not because of what happened. It's sometimes about nothing. So when you start to explain and justify why you're upset with your sister or brother, or we have all kinds of fancy explanations. Well, I didn't choose him as my brother. You know? Okay, therefore it's not so bad. So, no, you didn't choose it. But you are in the situation. The holding is the issue. So, this hour, this session, and we're going to do a little bit Kumne, this session was about convince yourself of the certainty of death. Just like you are able to do something else without thinking about it, it's your second nature. And one way to do it is to see other people, things, as if it is the last time. Whenever I did it in a retreat or seminar, it was euphoric. You open your eyes as if it's for the last time. And then your seminar is over and you go have a beer, and I don't know what you do, and then it's gone already. But this opening your eyes for the first time, if you open your eyes for the last time, it is as if it's for the first time. So see people as if it's the last time. Don't tell them that, because you get way too intense. Doesn't mean you should start grasping. This is the last time, let's use this. It's not like that at all. It is with a mind that is beginning to disassociate itself from this friend. The mind is beginning to separate from this friend, from this situation. You're becoming familiar with that you can do that it will happen. It's very difficult because for them, the mind is not doing that. So when you're dying, your mind is separating from them, and they not yet from you. So they're holding you while you are, whether you want or not, you are separating. I don't know what it is like to give birth, but it must be something like you can't go back, right? You cannot say halfway, well, let's put it back in. I don't like it. Right? It is happening, period. So you have to surrender to that. I guess that's what you people do. So when you're dying, you have to surrender to the fact that the mind is separating from becoming engaged. So if you see them for the last time, you become familiar with this separating. And the fruit you get is that that person comes more alive. You begin to see the spirit of that person instead of your projection. So I was visiting her grandfather, and at the very last phases, it seemed like he was emitting. He was being light. So she saw her grandfather for the last time, and it seemed like he was swimming in light. And when she was taking Sylvia was going home by bike, she suddenly felt as if the Opa touched her on the shoulder, says, "I'm dead now." So the other grandfather was different. It was the same Sylvia talking. The other grandfather asked her, implored her maybe, to do something one more time.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it too personal to say what that was? That will be fine. He wanted to go once more to their favorite vacation place that they used to go to when Sylvia was a little kid. Yeah, we get to these kind of phases. It's very, very important to ask a dying person, if you can, what would she like? And you don't come with what you like. You ask, what do you like? What would you like to do? Sometimes, if a person comes from a setting like this, they might say, I want to chant Vajraguru mantra together, or I would like to go one more time to Epe, a town in the middle of the Netherlands. And if the Opa is not able to go there, you make him go there with your story. You tell him, okay, we took the car. What did you have, a Trabant or something? Huh? Okay, so they had a Skoda. They went in a Skoda. Did you guys have a Skoda? Huh? Simca. So they went. So we used to go with on the Simca. You remember the Simca? And we sat in the back and the front. So you make the trip for him. Certainly, if he cannot go anymore, that would be the way. But it's also an easier way to do it because when you do it in your imagination, you relax much more, and you will therefore experience much more. If you physically go, then you have to worry about, he has to get into the car, and is he comfortable? Maybe you have to stop because he has to go to the back. So there's all the tension. It's really not that much fun to go once more to Epe. But if you do it in your imagination, all these tension, stress things will diminish. Oh, very nice story. So Pau was telling a story that she was going to Ratnaling for the last... But that's what you have to think, dear. She was going to Ratnaling as if for the last time, and she decided to meet the sister because... I'm sure you didn't fly KLM, because Aer Lingus would fall out of the sky, and she decided to meet, which you hadn't done much.
No, for a while not.
Had not met for quite a long time, and now they decided to meet. And
We had a 4-hour talk, so that was something.
And is she a little bit like you?
Oh, we are at, I don't know, what do you mean with me?
Well, I hope you know. You've been with you for a while. Is she a little bit like you, right? It stirs up emotions. I didn't say what you are like. I don't know. You know you. I don't know you.
So, yeah, I don't know, it's my sister.
You don't know?
We have different solutions.
Different solutions, but the same situations. We have the same situations, but we have different solutions. Well, that you can really op elkaar bouwen, niet? You can build on top of it, not on top, you can build on each other. Complement each other. My English is not improving here. All right, so this session is about to convince yourself that you are dying. Convince yourself, it's not a word I would choose, but to have a mindset to keep in the back of your mind or foremost in your mind. You keep other things in the mind all the time and you choose to put them there. Like, I shouldn't forget this. Or you tell your friend, remind me that I don't know, go to Albert Heijn, right? Remind me that before 6 o'clock I go to Albert Heijn. So now you can say, you remind my friend, remind me that I'm going to die for sure, for sure. And then the detail that death is not unfair. This is difficult to digest, but dying and death are not unfair. So don't demand that from somebody else, but you can say to yourself, it's not unfair that I'm dying. Okay, I'm 56 or 72 or 86. It's not that's part of life to die. There is no guilt associated with that. Rinpoche finds that guilt is one of the biggest problems that we have in the West here. They don't have a word for guilt in the Tibetan language. So he sees us burdened by guilt. So he would say no worry, no fear, no guilt. Mm-hmm.
If you have been living in a self-destructive way, then there is no guilt? Or you have to forgive yourself?
No guilt. One way to explain it, but that is my way, maybe you come up with, if you hear that, try to work with it. The way that I would work with it, no guilt, is when I feel guilty, I make it worse. So these teachings are very pragmatic. It doesn't work to feel guilty. It doesn't solve anything. Although when I was gone from the organization for 2 years, when I came back, he said, "Don't you feel guilty a little bit?" So it does work.
But what do you mean make it worse?
I'm talking Dutch for a second. Als je iets doet en je voelt je daar schuldig over,
Ja.
in de meeste gevallen maak je het alleen maar erger.
Oké.
The opposite is not true either, van it doesn't matter or I don't care or everything is fine. Not everything is fine, but the guilt is the...
Ja.
Zeg je in Dutch zelfkastijden, of is that something else? Yeah, so you don't want to do that. What do you hear about guilt in France? Is that a good thing or?
Yes.
Huh? Is recommended?
No. I'm not sure it's recommended or what.
No, but you can see it in other people easier than in yourself. If people are guilt, there's like a cloud, there's a heaviness that is very hard to lift, very difficult to lift. All right, so this, to convince yourself, bear in mind, foremost in your mind, the back of your mind, the certainty of death. One way of doing it is to imagine that the people you see, the places you go, as if it's for the last time. And the other thing is to solve lingering issues. And it's not necessarily the case that the solution is to do that with somebody else. One time a guy called me 11 o'clock at night because he had been in a workshop where they were told to solve lingering issues of the past. And I wanted to sleep. I don't have any lingering issues with this guy at 11 o'clock at night. So you do that yourself. I mean, don't get me or somebody else in there. Huh? Lingering is... huh? Ja, sluimerend is een heel mooi woord. Slepend is ook heel mooi. Zo'n mooie taal. We were talking Dutch for a second. So what's going on all the time underneath everything that can make you instantly upset? Sluimerend, yeah. All right, let's have a soft landing. So we're going to do one more time Joy of Being. We will do 37, number 1 and 2 of that, 25, and if we're still sitting by then, we do 26 also. So 37 is the standing, and the other 2 are sitting. Is it clear that in Joy of Being we don't focus on the body but on space? So the space that your hands are traveling through. So it's called opening mind and body. Andy knows how to loosen up. You do nothing with your feet? That's Kumne for old people. Okay. So the feet are a distance apart of like the hips. So the arms go forward and all you're paying attention to is the space you're moving through. It's not the same space. So go straight. And when the arms are straight in front, turn the hands. So the hands are at eye level. Palms facing outward, the fingers pointing up. So move your chin a little bit forward and raise your shoulders about halfway. Now here's again the eyes. It's very, very important in Joy of Being. Gaze in the distance that's never ending. So don't let your gaze stop, because when you stop, that is the end of your kum. That's the end of your space. It is the beyond where you can gain the new visions, the new kinds of energies. Now teach yourself, so I'll stop, that's the next move. Teach yourself how to open your arms to the side. Talk to yourself. You're not instructing yourself, it's more like a whispering in your ear, a lovely, loving whispering in your ear. Shoulders are still up, huh? Pull in the navel, pull up the pelvic floor, make a round mouth. Hold your breath. And release, flatten the hands. First flatten the hands, and then instruct yourself in a loving way how to go down. Don't just physically instruct yourself, it's really very, very limiting. You won't get to the depth of Kumne if you're just concerned about physical movements. Going forward. So don't worry about the arms, they know how to go forward. As your energy gets a different shape, instead of being contracted or held, now it's getting bigger. Turning the palms. Going to the side, you're not raising your shoulders in this one. Down the shoulders. Raise your shoulders. Raise the pelvic floor and hold the breath, mouth. Flatten the hands and go down without focusing on the body. It's the energy body that gets new shapes. It starts to become flowing. When your energy is flowing, you get new ideas. When it's not, you will have the same. Continuing, going forward. Forget the body, it's energy work. Space. So in the beginning it's body, and then it's energy, and then it's space. It's all shapes of space that you're first making and then allowing. Opening. Shape spaces. Spaces shaping. Your energy and space have united. Pelvic floor, navel, mouth. Hold your breath high in the body. And releasing. Going forward. This time don't stop in the middle, keep going up. So first energy work. No more body, energy. Energy is getting new shapes, becomes flexible, malleable. Turn the hands, going up, So as the energy begins to become flowing, energy and space become the same. They have merged. Flat the hands. Flat on the. Yeah. Pull up the navel, pelvis. Hold the breath. So by holding the breath, the energy in the space gets a kind of strength. It's not wishy-washy. It's not like watery oatmeal. It gets character. And releasing as you go to the side. Arms go to the side. When they are horizontal, you turn the palms forward, spread the fingers. But forget the fingers, I just don't know how else to say it. Spread the fingers. Fingers are more like antennas. And releasing. So that energy you're doing now, going down, that's important. If you drop your arms, the energy doesn't get strength. It becomes wishy-washy. Again, forward. Turn. Continue. So it's still energy, energy. Now it's merging with the space. So energy and space have joined into awareness. This posture is like so above, so below. Going to the side. Spread the fingers. So like now you have internet connection. All the antennas, there's communication. Your energy space, your awareness has antennas. There's connection with earth, water, fire, air, and space. They inform each other. The arms are going down, the fingers are releasing because the energy has been, the connection has been established. So it's not like it's ending. Make sure that nothing ends. There are no endings. Mark an end in time, but that's different. That's on the physical. Coming up, last time. Turn. So now the energy body gets its optimal space shape. Energy and space together into awareness. So above, so below. to the side. Opening the antennas, making new connections, not the same. So when the hands release, you're all connected, all wired up. It doesn't end. Energy, space never end. Awareness never ends. Sitting down, being still, and not sitting still, being still. There's no more sitting so much, being still. Gently draw up your knees, a short exercise before the break. Draw up your knees, feet flat on the floor. We're going to go to 26, part 3 and 4. Interlace the fingers, look at Andy. Pull the heels close to the body if you can. So you're looking above the horizon. No physical body orientation, energy, space orientation. As if you're sitting there bodiless, because energy, space has become your body. That's your kum. Now go on your tippy toes and the toes of your feet. Now lift off your feet and rock a little bit if you can. Forth. Dutch people and German people would say forth and back, forth and back. Forward and backward. Small rocking motion. Put the feet on the floor, hands rounded close, looking up 45, 60 degrees. Lift the feet off the floor, let the body rock backwards, forward, backward, small rocking motion. Keep looking up, huh? As much as you can, point your toes down without touching the ground. And one more time, stop, the feet flat on the floor, close, the heel close to the body, looking up. Just for a few minutes, be completely still. Last time, feet off the ground. Bend backwards, rocking. Try to rock with the lowest part of your body if you can. Not so much with the shoulders, but as if the base of the trunk is rocking. It's better to fall or trip than to be boring and safe. All right. Undo the legs, and for a few minutes remain being still. Being still without holding still. That will take a little while. Learn to be still without holding still. So before we end session 5, the reason why we are encouraged to convince ourselves of the certainty of death by practicing seeing people and situations and places for the last time, or trying to ease, smooth, and difficulties in relationships by first working with ourselves in most cases. Why we do that, it's only for one reason, and that is that according to these teachings, the moment of death is very, very important. That's why we practice this. It's not some kind of, well, let me not say why it's not this, but if you know that that whole practice of bear in mind the certainty of death, that's only so that when the moment of death is there, that we are aware. That's why we practice this. The moment of death, in the teachings of living and the life and death transition, the moment of death is the single most important part in these teachings for a human being. All right, so it's the end of session 5.
Om Mani Padme Hum Re. 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 Om Mani